French Prime Minister François Bayrou survived another no-confidence vote this evening after deputies from the left tried censoring his government over the Social Security financing bill. Bayrou pushed the budget through the National Assembly using a provision of the Constitution that lets it pass the chamber without a vote. That's all despite a growing storm against Bayrou over allegations that he lied about his knowledge of allegations of sexual abuse at a private Catholic school. More on that in a moment. Without the support of the Socialist Party and the National Rally, who voted to bring down the previous Prime Minister Michel Barnier's government last December, the no-confidence measure only rustled up 112 votes from the left. They would have needed 289 votes to bring the government down. The political consequences of the Socialist Party's decision has been a deep rupture in the New Popular Front coalition, which the left formed in last summer's legislative elections. Check out an episode called New Popular Fracture, which I've linked in the show notes for more on that. Yesterday, the Prime Minister, François Bayrou, was confronted by LFI Deputy Paul Vanier during government questions in the National Assembly. Yesterday's episode, which is also linked in the show notes, gets into that. Vanier accused Bayrou of a cover-up based on reporting from Mediapart. Mediapart found that parents of students at the school, called Notre Dame de Betharram, wrote to Bayrou before any lawsuits were filed, asking him to do something about reports and allegations of violence, sexual abuse, and rape at the school. There are currently 112 lawsuits against the school, naming 14 alleged perpetrators over 60 years. Bayrou, who was Minister of National Education at the time of some of the events, denied the allegations in response to Vanier. He said that he'd never had any knowledge of the allegations and that he'd be suing for defamation. He also claimed that the brewing scandal was just an attempt to bring somebody down once they got into power, and that he'd already left his role as Minister of Education before a single lawsuit was filed. But yesterday evening, after FLEP 24/7 was published, Mediapart reported on new documents which undercut Bayrou's claims. And this evening, an even more damning testimony from the judge who handled one of the cases was published in Mediapart as well. In Bayrou's response to Vanier on Tuesday, he said he'd left his position as Minister of National Education in May 1997, while the first lawsuit denouncing sexual violence was filed in December 1997. But in Bayrou's denial, he not only denied any knowledge of sexual crimes, but any knowledge of allegations of violence against students too. And the first lawsuit against the school was filed in June 1996, as Mediapart reported in their first story. That lawsuit didn't contain allegations of sexual violence, but of a brutal disciplinary beating of a student. In Mediapart's report last night, they included a clipping from the newspaper Sud-Ouest, where Bayrou defended the school in the face of the allegations, which made national news at the time. Many people in the area, Bayrou said, were pained by these attacks against the school and felt they were unjust. Bayrou also assured the paper that, quote, all information which a minister is able to ask for has been asked for. All verifications were favorable and positive. Bayrou's attitude, according to one former teacher at the school, was basically that the allegations were exaggerated. Françoise Gouling, who taught mathematics, told the magazine Le Point in 2024 that she'd told Bayrou's wife Elizabeth about physical violence against students. Elizabeth taught catechism at the school. Gouling also said she told François Bayrou about these allegations during a medal ceremony at the school. He minimized it by saying that I was undoubtedly exaggerating a little. I know that the nurse for the school also wrote in letters, Gouling told Mediapart. Mediapart also pointed to the milieu in the region that Bayrou was part of as evidence that he may have had a stake in downplaying allegations against the school. Serge Legrand, the school's longtime lawyer, was in François Bayrou's political party, UDF. In the National Assembly today, Vanier confronted Bayrou with this new reporting. You lied in front of the national representation, he accused Bayrou. You lied in front of the entire French people. Bayrou refused to answer, and Justice Minister Gérald Darmanin answered for him instead, drawing boos from the left. Darmanin said that the victims had the government's support, and that they deserved better than political games. He also called it shameful that LFI was using the facts of the crime to settle their own political scores. Mr. Prime Minister, your silence indicates that an omerta reigns at the summit of the state, Vanier responded when Darmanin finished speaking. Vanier said that this omerta also includes the President of the Republic. Emmanuel Macron, whose pleasure Bayrou serves at. A Green Party deputy, Arnaud Bonnet, also questioned Bayrou and accused him of lying. Yesterday you responded. Today you don't respond. According to Mediapart, you lied, Bonnet said. You've chosen omerta, he finished, to growls of indignation from deputies in the governmental camp. Both Vanier and Bonnet called for Bayrou to resign. Late this evening, Mediapart published an even more damning report. That was around 10 p.m., which is why we have a later in the day edition of Flep 24/7. Mediapart talked with Christian Morand, the judge in the case who had pursued charges against Father Caricart, a former director of the school who was accused of multiple rapes. Caricart fled to the Vatican after the first charges were filed against him, then killed himself after Morand summoned him following a second formal charge of rape by throwing himself into the Tiber River. Morand confirmed on the record that Bayrou had met with him informally in 1998 to discuss the case. Morand said at the time Bayrou's knowledge of the case was based only on what had been reported in the press. Morand told Mediapart that Bayrou said he couldn't believe that Caricart could have done what he did and wanted more firm confirmation of the charges. Morand confirmed to Bayrou that the facts of the case were both true and well established. Morand also shared details of the accusation against Father Caricart, which had compelled him to detain him, and said he still doesn't understand why Caricart was let out of detention by the court before subsequently fleeing to the Vatican. Morand said he understood that Caricart was close to the Pope. The first victim, Morand told Mediapart, had lost his father. The morning of the rape, Caricart woke up the child to tell him of the death, and that he needed to take a train to Bordeaux for the funeral. Then he brought him into the shower and forced the child, who was devastated by his father's death, to fillet him. A second victim, whose case Morand studied, came from a broken family. At holidays like Christmas and Easter, Caricart brought the victim with him, ostensibly to distract him from his hard family life, but in actuality to abuse him. Mediapart asked Morand if Bayrou, who over the years served as a local representative and president of the region, was worried about other students at the school. No. He came to see me to tell me that he was worried about his son, Morand said, to know if there were any risks. Bayrou's child was studying at the school at the time. He came as the parent of a child, Morand said. And that's the news we have for today. Sorry for a late night edition. New developments in the story pushed it back. We'll have more on the political consequences of the no confidence vote failing in the next few days. We have an interview coming up on Friday too. And of course, we'll be following this story about François Bayrou as it develops. I'm sure it's going to keep developing with more reporting and more political pushes in the National Assembly to get François Bayrou to account for these allegations. In the meantime, this has been Flep 24/7, the French Legislative Assembly podcast for 2025, every day for now. Thanks to everybody who's funding the newspaper subscriptions at buymeacoffee.com/flep24. You can help fund our deep dives at buymeacoffee.com/Patreon. And that's it from me. I'm Marlon, and I'm signing off.